Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So we are looking at the full market analysis, volume 113, just giving you an insight of what we've got up for next week and also compare our analysis from last week as well. So we'll start off with gold. So what we were looking at from last week was pretty much the potential sell-off. So through the week we had just pretty much a rally straight up into the zone, but not actually quite breaking the all-time high. But yeah, what I was potentially looking out for from last week was just a possible sell-off. So essentially here we've seen price pretty much end the week with some drop-off in price action. So I think what we're looking at again is, are we going to see this continuation lower and then for that final rally to the upside? So I am looking for like around 1875 to be hit. I'm happy to go ahead and get rid of this zone now, so the 1930 level. So I'm pretty much playing off of this kind of dynamic support resistance. If we take it back here, we pretty much tap in on some nice levels there. So I'm quite happy with that level that we've got here. So I'm looking for price to potentially tap into this zone here, and then it could give us that next rally or the main rally to the upside that we've been potentially anticipating. So obviously we had to wait for a long time for price to get back into the next buying position, because a few weeks ago we were looking at sell-offs from this level here, expecting it to go lower. Obviously, this is the consequence of just having a bit more of a bias flip over. So again, this is why we have to wait for a bit more longer time. But hopefully, if this does come to play, we can get back into this momentum and follow it to the upside. So be interesting to see how gold plays over the next few days or so, especially leading into April. So let's see what unfolds again with gold. So moving on with euro. So euro to the dollar. So with this, I'm actually looking for price to probably descend just a little lower. Again, we had some scenarios that we were looking at from last week, which was this possibility that we could get an upside move. Again, this was tapping into 1.11. Most likely we're going to end up going up into 1.15 eventually. We just have to figure out if this is going to be the new low of the market. So moving on from this week, what we can go ahead with is, as we are, we've got that initial push up, I am tempted to see if we can continue pushing up higher. So that's why I probably will leave this scenario in place. But my other option that I am looking out for is for price to essentially continue its way to the downside to take out this low and then rally higher. So those are the two possibilities that are still on the cards for myself. Again, I am still looking for buys, but short term, we can still potentially take some sells lower, just in case it does break that it does break the 1.08 level low, and then we can just keep our eyes out or keep our eyes peeled for that upside momentum to the upside. So I am excited for this move because I think it's going to be quite significant. Again, we just have to stay patient for this one and see where it can rally from. Okay, so moving on to Nzd Usd. So for this, again, we were looking for a sell-off to occur. I think we pretty much was 7th. Yeah, 7th was the start of the week. So pretty much we've had that huge drop off in the week. So again, nice momentum coming into play there. Ultimately, what we could be looking out for is for price to continue its way to this downside. I think that's what I was essentially gearing up for. But looking into this, I'm trying to see if we can expect price to fall just a little lower, and as we can see, continued momentum. So the bias for that I'm going to go for this week is probably something on a downside. So this would actually become my second. So let me draw it in again. So we could be just waiting for continued momentum to the downside. So we could be looking for sells, so like so, and then if we was to just be mindful of another scenario which is a potential buying support at 0.67 to 0.675. So within this area, we could be looking out for potential buying opportunities in which we anticipate price to go higher. So again, that's just the analysis that we had from last week, but pretty much touching on from how price is falling lower, we can probably expect price to continue moving lower and then, expect that buying opportunity. So, Asia session took out the sells and overnight, so pretty much we had price push lower. Again, there could be some early continuation plays lower, where price just continues to push lower, and then we have later through the midweek maybe the rally to the upside, maybe. But yeah, I'm just keeping my eyes open for that potential scenario. Moving on to AUD USD. So yeah, looking into this, I'm looking for price to drop off. So again, starting off the week, a nice momentum kicking off lower. What I'm curious to see that happens is if we can continue to push lower, is there going to be a possibility that we could find some support at 0.72, in the sense where we could expect price to push higher into 0.75, or is price going to continue to push lower and take out 71? So for that time being, while we're in this kind of mid zone of essentially sells, I'm going to be looking for trying to get involved with some sell-offs, and then see if we can look at buys. If the buys don't come into play, then we'll hopefully be hedged in and to the downside, and then we can go from there. So that's my kind of plan with AU. Taking a look at UJ, so unfortunately we just had the wrong bias on this pair. I did not discuss the upside opportunities, so we pretty much had to leave this one out. Unfortunately, there was some good move on in the Japanese yen pairs actually, but yeah, a nice 100 pip move to the upside. So not a problem. We can just kind of readjust our bias and go from there. So what's gonna happen now? What I'm thinking is essentially I'm looking for price to finish its move, whatever it needs to do to the upside, and hopefully then we can start to make sense that yes, price is probably gonna need a pullback, and this could be pretty much a long-winded pullback, and then we could be looking at more continuation plays higher. So I'm going to be looking for something like so, and that, with that being said, you could potentially look at some counter trend moves, well, sell-offs, if you really did want to. Again, I'd just be cautious on this. So just probably what you might have to do is just wait for some momentum to kick in. As we see, we're pretty much overbought, oversold. So we probably could have a condition where we could see price selling off soon. So momentum to the upside is showing there's weakness there. It's actually quite strong. One of the barriers here, so we had some sell off. So maybe there is some sell off going to happen soon. So we just have to wait for that. So that's why I'm looking for potential sell offs as a counter move. So moving on to Cad Jpy, again a nice push to the upside. Again, we was looking out for some possible sell-off opportunities here, but completely blew through it, tapping into 92. And again, luckily we covered this scenario on this analysis. But again, we expected price to, if price was to break 92. There is the possibility that we would be looking at more continuation plays, and yeah, I think it pretty much looks like it could actually do that, based on how prices moved aggressively to the upside. So obviously hindsight speaking, but again, this is why probabilities and scenarios for me work out over the long run, and the more scenarios that you can draw in and think about, the more you're kind of prepared. And again, that's why I try and do this pretty often. But yeah, anyway, so looking into this, I think essentially what we could be anticipating is essentially price to continue doing whatever it needs to do, and then eventually we could expect well, we should be expecting some sort of pullback. So again, like similar with UJ, you know, we can wait for price to turn over to the downside, potentially take some sells, but ultimately we're looking for price to buy up to the upside. So that's where I stand with CJ. Moving on to Euro JPY. So for this, pretty much a similar story. I think what we spoke about last week was the potential possibility of price rallying to the upside. So I've actually got some two scenarios I actually want to discuss with this. So as price is already pushing up higher, one scenario that I'm looking out for is for price to do something like this, which is very quite complicated. But I'm looking at basically 130 as a psychological barrier, and it all kind of makes sense when I draw it in. But essentially, we've got a downside scenario. So this 130 barrier. So as you see, if we take a look at 130 across, we've got some multiple levels here. You know, again, support, you know, support, dynamic resistance. So like I said, this is probably a nice level that I'm going to be watching for. So with this one is probably going to be most likely a sell-off bias. However, this other scenario that I'm looking out for is if we get a really strong and deep retracement, there is a possibility that price could rally back up to the upside and take out 133. And then as a third scenario is if that sells, if we take sales and we don't get that buy, then there is that possibility that we can go a lot lower to the downside to 124. I think that could obviously still take place. So what I'm keen to see is see if we can potentially move lower, and then, you know, as a plan, you could actually start to look for sells and then just keep an eye out for buys. Again, if we don't get the buys here, the sells should be able to be hedged in, and basically, yeah, if that doesn't come into play, then, you know, pretty much this should fall over to 124. So that's pretty much my kind of three-step scenario plan I've got for EJ. But yeah, ultimately, if I was to pick a bias, I would be looking for mainly, you know, this scenario to go into play. So after, you know, if we do get this break lower, you know, we're essentially expecting price to go up, like so. So it's not like we're expecting sales to be aggressive. We're most likely expecting the buys to be more aggressive. So yeah, so let's move on to AJ. So for this pair, I'm actually looking out for, so there's actually a zone that I've not actually drawn in. Let me just quickly draw it in. I think it's this one here. But basically, yeah, it's 85, 86, so it's this one. So basically this zone is now, you know, obviously as we're getting closer and closer to it, should have mentioned this from last week, but my bias for this first off is just a sell-off. We had some early signs in the week, but it never really progressed. Further than that, it took out the highs. So again, I'm going to be mindful that, you know, of this level, that if it can actually turn over, because we're expecting price to probably drop off very aggressively into 81, even 80. But as we are getting closer to that 86.5 level, if we do break above this, then I'm going to be pretty much in a potential bullish scenario. I'm not entirely too sure yet, because I think we need to see a bit more data up first. But if we basically go above here, I'm just going to probably have to come back next week and give a bit of an update individually, and see what happens with that pair. But most likely for this week, I'm going to be looking out for some sells, and I think we could, if this does turn over, we could be looking at a lot of sell-off within leading into April. So that's kind of my basis for AJ for this week. Last two pairs. So we got a USD Chef. So for this, where was it, 7th? So yeah, so what I was actually expecting was price to probably make one more low before actually going up higher. At least we got that momentum there. So we are coming into some higher levels and zones that we've haven't really discussed yet. So the 94 level. So I was expecting price to eventually push up higher if we had taken that low, but nonetheless price still rallied up. So I probably will get rid of this. So what I'm looking out for this week is to see if we're going to actually drop off aggressively and to take out this 91 zone. So this one's probably going to be a nice level. The next scenario that we have is if we do break above 94, we could be looking out for price moves in a bullish nature. So with that, if that happens, we're going to have to probably wait, because the bullish the next buying opportunity will have to retrace quite deeper. So we just have to wait for that one. But yeah, I'm trying to see if we can get some sells into this, and yeah, we're gonna have to probably just wait for this one to play out. So yeah, pretty much we can see obviously momentum's kicking up. So in a way, we could actually be looking out for some short-term buys, I guess, whilst we get closer to the upside of 94. Again, this is very minimal pips here, so again, it's probably worth just waiting for a better move like this, or waiting for a break up to the upside. But again, it's up to your risk tolerance and what you're trying to go for. And then finally, USD Cad. So what I was anticipating for this pair was to see if we could drop off lower. We didn't actually get that. We ended up rallying higher, which I didn't discuss on that in the event if 129 was being was to take place and be hit. But essentially, what I was thinking, that this was going to be the new low being created as price started to chop off, but instantly we recovered. So my bias is pretty much flipped over now, and we can interestingly draw some levels in. But ultimately, I'm looking for price to potentially push to the upside as one scenario, and then we've got another level that we can now draw in, 126. Oh, basically we got it drawn here, so we can drag that across. If we draw that in here, if we break this low, it's basically going to be something like this, where we're going to be waiting for that break lower, and then that pretty much that retest. So essentially that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if this is going to be, because we're pretty much in the balance of it all right now. We're just in the in-between of it, mixture of sells and a mixture of buys. So I think mainly I'm going to be trying to see if we can get some buys in, but also as momentum's already pulling off downwards, I'm going to try and look for some sells if we start to push up, if it gives us that opportunity. So I'm just going to be mindful for that. But that's pretty much what I've got for this week. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to cover news wise, but again, I hope you did get some value from this, especially from last week as well. But there was some good moves in this week, so hopefully you did manage to catch some pips there. But yeah, hopefully next week we can grab some more pips and these analysis comes to play. But yeah, if you did get some value from this, make sure to leave a like. If you haven't done so already, I hope you're subscribed, and we'll see you all next week in our next week's video. Thank you guys.